Now the webinar recording has started, and with that, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon from Germany to Iraq. Thank you very much for joining today's webinar on Horizon Europe. I will give you, as Saha has already mentioned, a short overview, a short introduction about Horizon Europe. And as it was mentioned already, this is part 2. And today I will talk about the work program calls and the topics. And what are these synonyms, these words mean in the Horizon Europe context. My name is Christoph Haas. I'm employed at the project management in Jülich here in Germany. And in my role as a national contact point, I'm part of the National Contact Point Digital and Industrial Technologies that is focusing on Cluster 4 in Horizon Europe. And I'm additionally part of the NCP for Industry networking project, and yeah, happy to be here and to give you this talk. I hope you will enjoy and you will get lots of information. All right, let me give you a very brief overview about what I want to talk today. I will give you a very brief overview of the work program calls and topics, and I will, to be a bit more specific, I will tell you where you can find the relevant documents, where you find the relevant additional documents you might need to prepare an application. I will also tell you what those documents even contain, because sometimes there are 50, 60 pages, and I don't think you have the time or the capacity to read through all of them. So I hope I can give you very good hints on how to find the relevant information. I also want to dive in a bit into how to read topic texts, so how to decipher what is maybe written in the text or even in between the lines. And I want to show you where you can find additional information on the topic texts. After the session, as I already mentioned, we will have a short Q&A session, and that we will wrap up the webinar. All right, we're talking about Horizon Europe. Horizon Europe is a research and innovation framework program organized and funded by the European Commission. It has a total duration from 2021 to 2027 with an entire budget of 95.5 billion euros. After the funding program has ended in 2000, or will end in 2027, we are going to have another Horizon Europe funding program with the exact same name, just for the upcoming 7 years. So from 2028 to 2034. What is always necessary to think of when you take a look at Horizon Europe is the political background, because the calls, the topics, they're not just falling out of the sky. They actually have a meaning of what should be addressed in the future and what is Europe trying to achieve. Here on this slide, I show you 2 main political background documents or initiatives by the European Commission, namely the European Green Deal, which aims at transforming Europe and turning Europe into the first climate neutral continent by 2050. And additionally, we have a Europe Fit for the Digital Age, which focuses on the participation with a new generation of technology. If you're more interested into those 2 big background initiatives, you also find the relevant links on the slides which will be shared after today's webinar. What I already showed you last time is the implementation strategy of how these huge policy initiatives turning Europe into a climate neutral continent, for example, are translated into the actual call topics, which should be then addressed by research and innovation projects. I will not go into detail, but it is always necessary to keep them in mind once you actually want to apply for a project in Horizon Europe. And what I want to focus today on is the work program, which is a collection of the call topics and gives you a very brief political overview and the actual topics. So for a topic, someone or as a researcher would apply for in order to get funding. Okay, let me switch to the next slide. Okay, have a short. No, that's not the right slide. Okay, my slides have shut down. I'm sorry for that.
No problem. In the meantime, maybe I can talk to everyone and tell them, guys, if you can just write your full name, your email, your number, your place of occupation in the chat so we can send the materials to you. And we have a group on WhatsApp, so I can add you to that as well. Thank you. Please in the chat.
Excellent. Perfect for the bridging of my technical difficulties. Thank you very much. All right, let me just set up everything so I can also admit people. Okay. In order to find the right information and the relevant information to the topics where researchers can apply for, I put here on the slide a couple of very important documents. I will also later on show you those documents. As I already mentioned, there's the work program here for the years 2023 to 2024. Currently, of course, we are in the year 2025, so there's an own work program just for this current year. There are the general annexes, which I will also discuss. I will show you very briefly the standard application form, so how the application should look like. And also very briefly, I don't think I prepared the annotated model grant agreement, but additional documents I'm prepared for you. All right, and where can you find all of these documents? You find them in the EU Funding and Tenders portal. And since I didn't want to show you screenshots of the Funding and Tenders portal, where to click and so on, I would actually like to do a live demonstration. I will show you the portal online. We will click through the relevant pages. But do not worry, I also have on the next few slides, I also have a couple of summaries of what I will click, where you find certain aspects of the documents, what they contain, and so on. So don't worry about that. If you might miss something, it should be also written on the slides. Otherwise, just raise your hand and yeah, we can discuss missing information. Let me just organize again. Please mute your microphone if possible. All right. Let's talk about the Okay, now everyone should be muted except of me. All right. Let's talk about the EU Funding and Tenders portal. You find it here. It's a very huge portal, very large portal. It contains a wealth of information. And to be honest, once I first looked at it, I was overwhelmed and I couldn't really find the relevant documents. It's all nice that the European Commission tries to be as transparent as possible, but sometimes you're just drowning in information. So therefore, I would like to give you a little guide through the portal. What I always take a look at if I want to find important documentations about Horizon Europe is I go to Guidance and Documents and then to Reference Documents. Be aware the portal is also sometimes very slow because of the wealth of information. I already pre-select the filters. We further more filter through the current 7 years, so 2021 to 2027. And then the portal shows you all kind of funding programs the EU Commission provides, which are currently active. And scrolling through it, clicking on Horizon, you find the relevant documents. What I already mentioned earlier is the legislation documents, meaning the political background, which is necessary in order to implement such a huge funding scheme. You find the Horizon Europe Framework Program Regulation, which I also had as a downloadable link on my slides. You find a specific program and further the EU financial regulations. If you really have the time to read through them, that's nice, but most of the time it's not necessary to read these documents in detail. Sometimes it's good to maybe glance through certain aspects and maybe reference them in your proposal. As I already mentioned, the actual call topics you find in the so-called work programs. They can be found in this top-down menu, and they are divided by the different years. And since we are currently in the year 2025, I would like to just jump to this work program, or the compilation of work programs, actually. You have under Horizon Europe main work programs 2025, you have all work programs that might be relevant to you when you want to apply for collaborative research. You find the Cluster 1 Health, Culture, Creativity, and Inclusive Society. Cluster 3, Civil Security of Society, for Society. Cluster 4, which I'm part of, Digital Industry and Space. Cluster 5, Climate, Energy, and Mobility. Food, Bioeconomy, Natural Resources, Agriculture, and Environment. And the other parts, for example, the missions, the new European Bauhaus. Let's take a look at Cluster 4. If you click here, you right away have a download link for the PDF version of the work program, which you then can analyze in depth, which I will show you in a couple of minutes. What I always recommend is to take a look at the general annexes. You find them here under 14 general annexes. You can also download the respective document and what you specifically find in this document. I will also tell you in a few minutes. Another important documents which can be found on this page are, for example, let me just close this here, the work program. You find grant agreement and contract templates, for example, the model grant agreement, which gives you already like a template in order to set up a grant agreement between your consortium and the European Commission. You find additional information on certain cost setups, like the lump sum setup, which requires a different model grant agreement between you and the European Commission, and so on. Under simplified cost decisions, you find additional information about, for example, the unit costs for small and medium enterprise owners, and also a wealth of other information. Since I'm not from the field of legal and financial matters, I would like to skip this part and refer you to national contact points who actually focus on this part if you have questions. Under guidance, you also find a lot of information, which I always recommend is the program guide, which is already existing in its version 5.0, and which I will also show you later on in the PDF version. You find a list of eligible countries, which the Iraq, of course, also falls under. So every entity in Iraq is eligible for funding under Horizon Europe. You find an online manual of how the whole portal works, how to set up a profile in the portal, how your university should set up a profile in order to even apply for funding. You find amendment guides if you already have a running project and need amendments to your current contract. You find a guide here, and so on and so forth. I don't want to jump into details on all the guidance documents, but there are really a lot of guiding documents which are very beneficial if you have certain questions. Under templates and forms, you find specific application forms specific to the type of action you want to apply for in Horizon Europe. Just show you, there are really a lot. I will also show you later as an example, the one for research and innovation actions. You find the evaluation forms, which are used by the evaluators to evaluate your proposal, and you really can see which aspects of your proposal will be graded, will be judged by the evaluators, and to really make sure that you address those parts in your application. You find also audit templates, grant agreement preparation templates. You find validation and LEA appointment forms. Again, setup which you need in order to register your institution in the portal and to even apply for Horizon Europe money. What I also find very nice, which used to be way better in the past, is the expert lists. Everyone who is not an NCP can sign up to be an expert evaluator in Horizon Europe. You can, if you're being selected, you can grade applications to Horizon Europe and even receive a little money for that. And all the experts that have been enrolled in 2023 and 2024 are even publicly shared. So there's a huge list of the experts, but they are not sorted by country, for example, due to certain data protection rules. But if you decide you want to be an expert in Horizon Europe, your name might also pop up here as well. Yeah, and additionally, you find some privacy statements and terms and conditions of the funding and tenders portal. Okay, so you find really a lot of documents here. And now I want to show you a couple of those documents, what they contain, what you find there, and how to maybe navigate them. All right. Yeah, as I already showed you on one of the slides, a screenshot of the work program. Now I picked the work program for cluster 4 for the year 2025, so for the current year. And as you see already here in the header, we have about 339 pages to go through. Just kidding, we are not going through all the pages, but I want to give you an overview of what you might find there, how to navigate, and how you easily, in ideal cases, find the relevant information. Of course, there's always a table of contents to the huge documents. Let me just get my, okay, this, yes. You find always an introduction of the work program. You find an introduction to the respective thematic area. In that instance, it's digital, industry, and space, how they are oriented within this framework. You find an overview of, okay, that works as well, perfect. You find an overview of the calls, and more specific, the different calls in the different thematic areas. You have call about industry, a call about space, one for digital, another one for digital. You have here once the prefix connect. That's one of the general directives in the European Commission, connect. You have HADEA, that is the agency that runs the coordination of these calls. And you have in the industry part another aspect of two-stage proposals. Furthermore, the whole cluster is further divided into destinations, which are further, which focus even further on different thematic areas. For example, Destination 1 is titled Achieving Global Leadership in Climate Neutral, Circular and Digitized Industrial Digital Value Chains. That is, again, a whole mouthful, which is then further subcategorized into a so-called section. For example, manufacturing. So there you actually find a collection of topics that address manufacturing. You find another section, construction, here. I hope you see my cursor. And here is another section, energy intensive industry, decarbonization and energy efficiency. So just what I want to show you, let me just click through them, is the whole nomenclature, which I was talking at the beginning, is you go from work program to destination, so to further group the topics. Destination is further split into sections, and in these sections you actually find the topics which the researchers or you yourself will address. Okay, let me switch back. All right, let me take a look. What else do I want to tell you here? Yes, perfect. Okay, I want to shortly go through the different parts. So the introduction, as I already said, gives a little bit of a background of the political background, what you want to address. Since we're here in the field of digital industry and space, you see, for example, certain aspects which the European Commission wants to address, and certain initiatives and activities the European Commission started, for example, the Net Zero Industry Act and the Critical Raw Materials Act. So there you really get rather good overview of the political background that should be addressed. You see, for example, a competitiveness compass, which you might also read up on the Clean Industrial Deal and so on. So you really get a lot of overview information. Afterwards come the huge tables for the calls, which are also of high relevance. You find, for example, when do those calls open? When are the deadlines? You find the budget for certain call topics. For example, here, integrated approaches for remanufacturing is an innovation action, so a bit further down the line in the innovation pipeline. The whole topic has a total budget of 35 million euros, and the European Commission thinks that it can fund up to 6 projects with a budget per project between 5 and 7 million euros. So this is how you can read those summary tables. I'll just scroll through the next important thing I want to show you. Let's talk very briefly about the destinations. The destinations, again, give you an overview of the political background and what should be achieved in the long run, which should be, which your project should cater to. So here you always find small political background of the call topics that should be addressed, and then you actually get to the call topics. The call topics are also structured in the same manner in every instance. You again find the topic identifier, in that sense, Horizon Cluster 4, Industry 2025, call number 1, and then further categorized in twin transition, so the transition of Europe into a more digital and more green society, and in the end, identifier the -01. Then you find the title of the topic, and in that instance, you even find a nice reference to the Made in Europe partnership. Let me tell you how usually these topics are created. In general, the call topics are, let's call them, generated by the European Commission. They are then brought to a huge table with the European member states, the 27 European member states, in which Germany, for example, is part of. And then there's a lively discussion of how these call topics should be changed, adapted, amended, or certain things should be crossed off. After that, these call topics are being approved by the member states and then officially published. In certain aspects, for example, in the manufacturing area, there are also partnerships that have been formed. For example, the Made in Europe partnership. These partnerships are partnerships of universities, larger companies, smaller companies that form like a partnership. And within this partnership, they are discussing how the manufacturing sector, for example, in this instance, should focus on in order to keep Europe a competitive continent in the field of manufacturing. In theory, every entity can become a part of a partnership, a member of the partnership, and can with that try to shape also the upcoming calls in Horizon Europe. So in this instance, the partnership, did a lot of discussions internally and proposed certain call topics, which are then shared with the European Commission, which then in the next step shares it with the member states. So the creation process of these call topics is a little bit different, and therefore it's also important to read the documents the partnership actually produces and sets out their strategic agenda for a larger period of time to get the text in between the call text. Every call topic has a summary table up front. So you again find the expected EU contribution per project. You find an indicative budget for the whole call topic. And as we already saw, the EU Commission expects 6 projects to be funded under this one topic. Now you also see the technology readiness level, which should start for the project technologies at the TRL 5. What that means we come in a second. And the TRL level, which the project should reach at the end of the project, which should land you at 6 to 7. Additionally, there is an additional information for you. Since for this call topic, you should, for example, include a business case and an exploitation strategy. You actually get 3 additional pages to your descriptive part of the project, which is always welcome, that you have more space. How many pages you in total have for a call topic, we will also come in a second. After this table, you find a very short overview of the expected outcomes, meaning in this instance, the manufacturing industry should benefit from the following outcomes. And the expected outcomes are more like a long-term outcome which your project should receive. So not something your project after 1 year of project runtime should achieve, but more like at the end of the project or even a couple of years later. So these are the long-term goals you should achieve with your project in this instance. Afterwards, you find a scope. The scope usually sets up the scene of the political scene, but also in this instance, the manufacturing scene in which this call topic falls. So here the scope is, of course, on remanufacturing. What does it build on? Why is remanufacturing important? Where are maybe the shortcomings so far? And how you or the projects can overcome these shortcomings. You sometimes also find certain aspects like recycling technologies for the generation of secondary raw materials are not within the scope of the topic. So meaning if you in your project include only recycling technologies for the generation of secondary raw materials, you might not even start applying because you will not have a chance of receiving funding. So everything that is really written in the call topic applies. That is really important. Afterwards, after the scope, you find which of the aspects your proposal should address. And then you find certain phrases that can mean one way or one thing or another. If you find, for example, proposal should address all of the following, you cannot just skip 1 or 2. then you will get a worse grading of your proposal and will not receive funding, because the topics are usually quite competitive. So if you find phrases should address all of the following, in my opinion, you can actually cross the should and substitute it by a must. So the proposal must address all of the following in order to be competitive, let's say. Sometimes you also find certain phrases like proposals should address at least 2 of the following aspects, and then there's a list of 8 topics for 8 bullet points, for example. Then of course you must, or you should address at least 2 of the aspects, but I would always recommend choose maybe 3, 4, or maybe even 5. This really depends on a case-by-case aspect. After these bullet points, there are usually more bullet points, more information, which you can also take a look at yourself at some aspect if they're necessary for you. Sometimes you find also references to other legal documents. You always find them here on the bottom. And in an ideal case, you even find already the links to the respective pages where you can find additional information. Here we again find the aspect of that you should include a business case and exploitation strategy as outlined in the introduction of the destination. If you remember the introduction of the destination we took a look at earlier, there are also a couple of sentences about the business case and the exploitation strategy, and you find additional information. What is always nice to have is like where relevant proposals should encourage to build on or seek collaboration with existing projects. So there, when you read something like this, maybe it is wise to screen past projects which might have an influence on this project you're planning to implement. Sometimes the EU Commission is even very nice and gives you certain call topics that have been funded in the past, where you can then actually take a look at these projects, take a look at what they did in the past, and then you can maybe think of how you can maybe even collaborate with them or reach out to the project members in the past. Everything is public, and can maybe discuss with them a project or joining their already preparing a proposal. Another important aspect, in my opinion, which you find more and more in Horizon Europe, is the incorporation of social science and humanities, meaning that the technologies you develop in Horizon Europe are not just for the companies, but the larger society should be also, well, taken by their hand, let's say. They should be shown what these technologies can do for them in ideal case everyday life, and really promote that, let's say, every citizen will agree that the money is spent wisely, that they have a huge benefit from the money that has been funded, that has been distributed to funding the project. So therefore incorporating social science and humanity actors is, in my opinion, very important. It's always nice to, not just nice to have, but it's, I think sometimes even a requirement, which you should have in order to like take the extra mile to get the funding. And since the skills we all learned will not be the skills we need till the end of our work life until we retire, it's also important to incorporate that aspect so that the workforce is being re-educated, learns new skills in order to stay on top of it, keep their jobs, and be happy and prosper. Sometimes you find also nice phrases like international cooperation is encouraged. By the way, it's always encouraged, especially in this instance with Japan and Taiwan. And you find again a reference to the European Partnership Made in Europe, that it that this topic implements the co-programmed European partnership made in Europe. Okay, there was a lot of information now on the call topic, how to read them. If I read, for example, something like this, this topic comes from a partnership, I always take a look at what are the goals of the partnership, take a look at how the proposal can maybe incorporate these goals into their application. All right, I need a short breather and take a sip of water. If there are any questions, please raise your hand or write it in the chat, and I'll give you a minute to maybe put them any urgent aspects. Otherwise, I will continue and we can also discuss them later on. Okay, I don't see any hands and I do not see anyone typing. That's fine. As you can see here on the upper part, I also want to show you other important documents. Not as, sorry, I see a hand raised. Yes, please go ahead.
Hi, hello, good afternoon. It's Dr. Asma from University of Al-Qadisiyah. I have a question here. You mentioned something about partners. How many partners do we need? And do they have to be from the European Commission or from European countries?
Yes, I cannot give you a number which you have to have, or sorry, let me rephrase that. There is one rule which you have to follow, which is that the consortium you're building contains of at least 3 partners out of at least 3 European states or associated countries. That means you need, for example, just really an example, a partner from Germany, one from Greece, and one from Spain. Then this eligibility criterion is covered, and then you can add as many partners as you want. As an average, you have about 16 to 18 partners per project, so really large projects, I must say. And these partners come from at least 7 different countries. So usually you really build quite large consortia. That means, for example, if you just want to apply Iraq and, I don't know, a Portuguese partner, you would not be eligible because you do not follow this so-called 3 out of 3 rule. So therefore you need more partners. If you can address all the different aspects of the call topic with, let's say, 8 partners and you follow the eligibility criteria, that's fine. You do not need to have 18 partners as long as you address everything in the call topic.
So the minimum number of partners would be 3?
Yes, exactly.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, then I'll go further. I want to very briefly show you the general annex, which you should always keep in mind because it contains a lot of information that is not in each call topic. You find again a table of content. You find a very brief introduction what you actually find in the general annex, for example. You find award criteria, mandatory documents, evaluation procedure. You find legal and financial setup, what you should do. You find admissibility and eligibility criteria, which we will take a look at, and so on. Let's take a look at the admissibility criteria very briefly. I don't want to go through every page. Application, of course, must submit it before the call deadline, which is always mentioned in the work programs, which I showed you earlier. And as a time, usually the time 5 o'clock Brussels time, so that would be, I think, 6 o'clock your time, applies. So this is always important. Sorry, someone stole my screen sharing. No worries. So now you should see it again. Okay. All the applications must be submitted electronically. They, of course, must be complete, readable, accessible, and printable. You have to upload, for example, a PDF version of your proposal, and so on and so forth. Then the page limit. I already mentioned earlier. We will discuss that now. So for a full application, you have 45 pages, except if you are looking at a coordination support action, which is also marked in the call topics, then you have a page limit of only 30 pages. The co-funded actions we now exclude. Then the European Commission introduced a new cost scheme called lump sum. That requires you to plan way more ahead of time during your proposal page, and it should make your life easier once you actually implement a project. Since you need way more description in the proposal page, in the proposal phase, every lump sum topic gives you the chance of not just writing 45 pages, but you can write 50 pages. And for coordination support action, you get additional 3 pages. So page limit is raised from 30 to 33 pages. If you apply in a 2-stage call, you first have a reduced proposal that you should submit, and there you actually just have 10 pages, but you also do not need to address every aspect which you need to address in a full application. As you can see, there is already on this first page a lot of information that is necessary in order to prepare your application. The rest of the pages I want to skip because there is a lot of more details. But what is also clearly stated is entities eligible for funding. Here you find a huge list of countries which would receive funding. So an entity from Hungary, for example, will receive funding if they apply and are selected. There are also a couple of associated countries which are not part of the European Union, but have joined association agreements. You find a non-exhaustive list here. There are constantly updates on associated countries to Horizon Europe. And you also find the Iraq here in the list. So entities from Iraq are eligible for funding in any case, unless it is stated otherwise, which to my knowledge, I haven't seen so far, at least for the Iraq. All right. Those in a very, very brief overview are the general annexes. I would like to very briefly take a look at the standard application form, so you have a rough overview of what is expected of you in order to prepare an application. The application in Horizon Europe in the collaborative research calls is divided into 2 parts. Part A, which is the general application form, and then a technical description of your project, what you plan to do. In this application, or in the standard application form, you find really also a lot of descriptions and examples. As you can see, it's 56 pages. I will, again, not go through every page. This is, of course, an example. Do not complete it. Once you actually do decide to apply in Horizon Europe, you log into the Funding and Tenders portal, start the application process, and then you actually get these templates as a download. You can download them and actually use those templates to create your proposal. The part A, you actually do not need to prepare offline. You can do that all in the portal. And What is also very nice is you have always a track change. So you always see what maybe has changed between the different versions. So if you, for example, work with version 2.0 and at some point there will be another updated version 3.0, you see right away what has been changed. So part A is to give general information about all the consortium member, the participants. You give information about the budget, ethics, security. And as you can see, I will very slowly scroll through it. Those are a lot of tables that might be a pain, but that really need to be filled out by every project member. Most of them are self-explaining, but some might require more detailed analysis. For example, the budget for the proposal. You have different cost categories. Usually, if you're new to Horizon Europe, you do not coordinate a Horizon Europe project. You usually kind of attach yourself to a let's say, experienced coordinator, and they really support you in filling out all these documents. And you kind of learn on the job, so to say. So don't worry about that. They might look a bit scary at the beginning, but once you actually take a deeper look, it will be okay to figure out, also with your legal and financial departments. You have a lot of yes and no questions here. And what I actually want to come to is the technical description. This is like a, let's say, freestyle part where you really describe on how you want to implement your project. Again, you have a track change, and you have, first of all, a small introduction with a lot of information which you really need to follow. You have, for example, what I already mentioned, the page limit is mentioned again for certain aspects. You have 50 pages. If you have a business case and lump sum, you're not at 45 pages, you're actually at 53 pages. And the portal should also recognize that. So if you, for example, want to hand in 54 pages, the portal automatically cuts off the last page. So you can really just upload 53 pages. That's important. You get further information, for example, on the font size. You really get a lot of support here, and it's always good to know that you have those guidelines and that you can ideally follow them, because if everything kind of looks the same, makes it also easier for the evaluators to really just judge by content. You find a lot of definitions. What is a milestone? What is impact? What is outcome? So on. And then you actually come to the, let's say, template. You have usually a descriptive table which summarizes all the consortium partners. And then you actually have what you should address in certain aspects. You have, in the descriptive part, you have 3 areas where you should describe your project: the excellence part, the impact part, and the implementation part of your work. And you find in the template really what you should address. Aspect part should give a clarity and pertinence of the project objectives, the extent to which the proposed work is ambitious and goes beyond the state of the art. It further gives you hints on what you should address in the respective fields, or in the in the respective parts, and it even gives you a hint of how many pages you could achieve that. If you need here 6 pages and later on a bit less for other parts, that's totally fine. This is really just an example. You do not need to follow this rule, but it might come in handy when you describe certain aspects. Here you, for example, have the methodology. It's always good to really follow these guidelines, which are given in the application forms, to also give the evaluators a hint of, hey, in this aspect, you expect certain parts of the project description, then I will also give you them there. So to also make your life and the evaluator's life easier when they find certain aspects in the parts where they should expect them. Here you have the impact part, again with certain descriptions. The table you should fill on 2 pages. And third is the quality and efficiency of the implementation, so how you actually want to structure your work plan, your resources, list of the work packages, and so on. You again get a lot of tables you can fill. Most of the stuff is usually self-explaining, which you would usually either way set up. So therefore, this is also helpful. And yeah, this is kind of the standard application form, which is then actually very customized for dedicated call topics. The evaluation form is actually similar. In the evaluation form, you see how your proposal will be rated. That's very nice. So you see right at the beginning that for each of these 3 parts of your project description, so you have excellence, impact, and implementation, you can get a rating between 0 and 5. 5 means excellent, 4 very good, 3 good, and so on. And what is important that you have certain thresholds. So each individual criteria needs to have at least a scoring of 3, but an overall threshold, you need to have at least 10 points to be even eligible for funding. So this is always important to keep in mind. So even if you have a good proposal of, let's say, a total score of 9, that will not be enough to receive funding. Lately, it happened quite often that even very good projects, so 12 points, 13 points in total, will not receive funding because there are even better proposals that have been submitted, which have even sometimes a rating of 15 total points. So here you find an overview of that. You have a specific case with the 2-stage proposals I want to skip now. And on the next page, you actually see how your what kind of feedback you will get from the European Commission. The evaluators, usually 3 evaluators will evaluate 1 proposal and agree upon 1 scoring. They will fill out this evaluation form, and you will get here under evaluation, you actually get comments from the evaluators, and they kind of will justify why you maybe did not get 5 points. They will address everything that you should address. So if your methodology was good, if the description of the state of the art was appropriate, if it was missing, if it was lacking certain things, and so on and so forth. Impact part, you will get your own scoring, quality and efficiency of the implementation, you get your scoring, and then your total score. 1 second, I need to take a sip of water. Sorry about that. So you will actually already, before you apply, you will already kind of see how you will receive your evaluation. And yeah, there are even further details what the evaluators or actually the call coordinator will fill for you. What can be also accomplished is once you actually receive your scoring and let's say you did not receive funding, we as national contact points, we could also take a look at your scoring and can take a look at where you maybe lost points and can try in that instance to help you improve for future applications. So you can always reach out to the NCPs. If your national NCP does not have the knowledge just yet on how to read such evaluation summaries, they can always reach out, for example, via the NCP for Industry networking project or directly to me, doesn't matter. And maybe we can take a look at them together, because the more of those evaluation summary reports, that's how they're called, you read, the better you get an understanding of the language the evaluators use and where you maybe find certain shortcomings of your proposal. Okay, time is running a bit, so I will skip a little bit about the model grant agreement. This is also a document which I showed you online, which you can see. This has even 131 pages, so a huge document, but it really helps you to set up a grant agreement between your project and the European Commission. Gives a lot of legal explanations, and I will skip that for the time being. Another document which I would like to recommend is the Horizon Europe Program Guide. It has only 61 pages. It also has a huge track change history and, of course, a table of contents. You find general information usually on Horizon Europe in the program guide, but it's always helpful to every now and then maybe take a look at how was it with the partnerships? What is the structure and budget of Horizon Europe, for example? What is the terminology? You find again an explanation of the terminology that is being used in Horizon Europe. You find the structure and the budget again, which I actually explained or presented in the first webinar we had together. And yeah, what is the strategic plan and why is it important? I think I did not present it in that detail, I must admit, but if you want to know about more the strategic plan, take maybe a look into the program guide. Yeah, here again the partnerships, and yeah, so these are the important documents I wanted to very briefly show you. And let me take a look of my internal agenda. So let me share this again. So what I want to talk to you now, which you also find later on this slide, is how you can actually find the topics which I showed you in the work program, where you can actually find them online. A very important remark is, even though you find everything that is written in the work program, you find also online in the Funding Attenders portal, but the actual text, which is binding, legally binding, is in the work program. So meaning if the European Commission made errors in copy pasting from the document to the web page, that is not their fault, let's say, because they always say the text in the work program is binding. So I wouldn't just rely on the text you find online, but also look at the work program, which I just showed you. Okay. You find the relevant calls under funding, calls for proposals. Let me deselect the filters. Yeah. I want to take a look at the programming period, which is the current one, of course, 2021 to 2027. I want to take a look at Horizon Europe, which has 3,370 entrances, so really a lot. And I don't want to take a look at the closed topics, which reduces the number drastically. I don't want to look at the forthcoming ones. I want to take a look at the currently open call topics. So I deselect the forthcoming. I'll double check because I keep on seeing people entering. Okay. All right, and now I want to focus on the cluster 4 topics. As you remember, there always the call identifier always consists of Horizon, for example, then CL642, and we want to take a look at cluster 4. 2025-01. This was actually the call topic we took a look at earlier, but the whole call actually consists of, in this instance, of 28 topics, which have all the same opening date, which have all the same deadline. You see now a lot of them, and I actually would like to take a look at a different one than earlier to just mix things up a bit. Let's take a look at, okay, let me take this one. Okay. So this is in the same call, Horizon Cluster 4 Industry 2025-01, and then has a different prefix, materials. Material, this topic is, for example, not in Destination 1, but in Destination 2. It implements actually different partnership, the Textiles for the Future partnership, which is a new partnership now in 2025. And the title is Digitally Enabled Local for Local Textile and Apparel Production. Here on the left-hand side, you find the internal navigation. If you click on them, you jump right away to the specific point. In general information, you find again the call, find what kind of action it is, and it is an innovation action, single stage. So you right away would have to apply with a 45-page proposal. It's a lump sum grant. If you remembered and paid attention, you do not have 45 pages, but 50 for your application. And your deadline is September 23rd this year at 5 o'clock Brussels time. If you hand in a minute later, you will not be successful with your submission. So this is always important to know. And then if we take a look at the topic description and open it, this is exactly what you also find in the work program, which I showed you earlier with the expected outcome, the scope, and the activities you should address. Under topic updates, it might even happen that there are changes to the topic text, which would be announced. So always keep a look at the topic updates dates of the European Commission. This is always important. You find the description of the topic. The description of the destination of this respective topic. This can be found here. This is what we found earlier, this destination introduction. Again, quite detailed. Sorry. You find topic conditions and documents. This is also quite helpful because here you again find the links to the annexes, which you can take a look at. Eligibility countries. So all the different annexes which were in this one document I showed earlier, you find here. You find certain legal and financial setups for the grants, specific conditions. You find again standard application form, which I showed you earlier, standard evaluation form I also showed earlier in the program guide, and so on. So you really find also here a lot of information. You find a general budget overview over all the call topics in this aspect. Total budget, single stage, opening date, deadline, how many grants or projects should be funded per project. What is also very nice to see is every single call topic has a certain area with partner search announcements, where everyone can announce, hey, I have this and this expertise. I'm offering my expertise and I'm open for joining a consortium. The only stuff you need is to set up a profile, and then you can post under the specific call topics. You can find, you can post your partner search announcement. You can filter them, you can check them, and even some projects are searching for expertise. So expertise offered is usually like a single beneficiary who would try to find a consortium. Expertise requests are usually already set up projects that need certain aspects for their proposal. So we were in the partner search announcement. Let's take a look at start submission section. Once you're actually logged in, you can select here and start your submission. Once you start a submission, you need to fill out part A, which I showed you, this huge monstrum of tables. And in a further step, you can then download the topic-specific templates, which are necessary for your application. Also, quite interesting to see is every topic, if contains a Q&A section where, for example, national contact points had questions to the European Commission on certain aspects of a certain call topic. And then the European Commission shares these questions, but also these answers they gave to the national contact points. So I would always recommend to take a look at that regularly. Maybe there's something new, or if you have a question to a call topic which you do not know how to answer, and you contact your NCP and they also do not know how to answer them, the NCP can reach out to the European Commission and get clarification for certain aspects. Below, completely at the bottom of the topic page, you find a Get Support section where you, for example, also see the link to the national contact points, the online manual, and so on. There's even an IT help desk if you have problems with the platform. You can check this here. Okay, let me take a look at if I addressed everything. Yeah, what I also highly recommend, if you plan to submit a proposal in Horizon Europe, you of course always need to submit your proposal prior to the deadline. This is clear. I highly recommend to not submit your final PDF an hour before the call deadline. The portal is then sometimes very weak, has long loading periods, and if you are in bad luck, to make it blunt, no one cares if you're after the submission deadline. So what everyone is always recommending, what is also my recommendation, is you can always submit a proposal, even though if the proposal is not fully set up yet, and you can resubmit prior to the deadline. So you can always upload an update of your proposal, and by that be always sure that you at least have handed in something. So this I always highly recommend to not, to get a huge headache because of instability of the server. Okay, I already talked a lot, and I also want to give you the chance of raising your questions if there are any. Yeah, just very brief overview. That's me again. I'm a national contact point, as I said, in Germany. I'm part of the NCP for Industry Networking project, which will actually end on Sunday. And on Monday, we'll start with a new project, NCP for Industry Plus. A multitude of services for for applicants, but also for national contact points. And with that, I thank you very much for your kind attention. Thank you very much for joining today. And I'm still sorry if the Arabic text is wrong. I hope it reads "Thank you for your attention" in Arabic. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for coming, and thank you, Christoph. I think we have a few questions. before we log out. Yes. Can you hear us, Christoph?
Yes, sorry, I can hear you. I was just muted. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. There's, I think, a few questions before we end the session.
Yes. Okay, I will first start with the question in the chat, and then we go over to the raised hand. What is the chance of winning such funding projects? Sorry, I wanted to stop the recording.